The story begins with a young man named Fieng, who returned to his hometown to visit an old school friend. The two of them strolled through the town and suddenly noticed a long line of people gathered in front of a shop. At first, Fieng thought it might be a famous tavern attracting a crowd, but upon inquiry, he found out that it was actually a medical clinic, and the large crowd was due to the fact that this clinic was reputed to be run by a miraculous healer. Although the clinic was known for its skilled doctor, this healer was also called by another, more mysterious name, the Ghost Doctor. Fieng's friend told him that it was an intriguing tale. Fieng, who was fond of strange stories, suggested they stop by a nearby tavern to have a few drinks while listening to more about it. The friend was not a medical expert, just a woodcutter, but he had heard a rumor that many years ago, while in the mountains, he had saved an animal. It turned out that the woodcutter, during one of his trips to the mountains to gather firewood, had heard a strange and pitiful cry. The cry was so peculiar that he could only guess it was a rabbit or a squirrel trapped in a snare. Sure enough, after searching for a while, he found a small animal caught in the trap. He kindly freed the animal and let it go. After returning home, he fell terribly ill, but once he recovered, he found that he now had the ability to heal others. However, his methods were quite strange. One person in the town was suffering from a peculiar illness. His nose would bleed sporadically. After many years of seeking treatment, he heard of the Ghost Doctor and decided to give it a try. When the man arrived at the Ghost Doctor's clinic, he found the doctor sitting in a chair, occasionally coughing. The atmosphere in the room was eerie. The man was about to speak about his illness when, before he could open his mouth, he heard a voice echo throughout the room. Boil 3 herbs and drink a dose every day. 5 days will cure the illness. To his surprise, the Ghost Doctor had already understood his condition and provided a treatment. Although the Ghost Doctor was able to cure many diseases, he was rather clueless about the ways of the world and opened his clinic right across from another established clinic. Since the opening of this new clinic, the owner of the other clinic became angry because no one came to his shop anymore. How ridiculous! How could a mere woodcutter know how to cure diseases? The owner of the other clinic gritted his teeth in frustration. His servant overheard rumors that the Ghost Doctor worshipped a sacred tablet, which was said to be the reason for his success. So, the owner instructed his servant to sneak into the Ghost Doctor's clinic and find out whether this sacred tablet existed, and if so, to destroy it. That night, the servant secretly entered the Ghost Doctor's house to carry out his mission. After climbing over the wall, he found the room where the deity was worshipped. Carefully, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. Inside, there was indeed an altar with a sacred tablet placed on it. It seemed the rumors were true. The tablet read, "The Ghost Doctor Great Master." The servant had no idea who the Ghost Doctor Great Master was, but he assumed it was this tablet that was causing the disturbances. How could a woodcutter possibly know how to cure diseases? He must be a rogue or a sorcerer. The servant knocked over the altar. He believed that after this, the Ghost Doctor's clinic would have to shut down, and he would be rewarded by his master for doing a good deed. While thinking this, he began to wildly destroy everything in the room. As he was gleefully smashing things, he suddenly heard a voice behind him. The voice sent chills down his spine. Turning around, he saw an old man with white hair and a white beard, dressed in white, standing right behind him. The servant stammered, asking if the man was a person or a ghost. The old man asked him why he was causing destruction. He also said that both clinics had been opened to help people. So why was he behaving like this? Hearing this, the servant thought the old man was frail and harmless, so he decided to act aggressively, grabbing a candle holder and attempting to strike the old man. But instantly, the old man vanished. The old man warned him to stop, but the servant, confident that he had found the old man's position, decided to strike him again with the candle holder. Seeing that the servant refused to stop, the old man waved his sleeve, and from it, countless silver needles shot out. The servant was terrified. By the time he tried to dodge, it was already too late. In an instant, his body was covered in silver needles, looking like a hedgehog. He screamed in pain and rushed to the door, never daring to trouble the ghost doctor again. As the two were talking, a person walked by outside the window. It was the same servant from the story. The man was covered in small scars, resembling a pockmarked face. After the incident, he became sullen, rarely speaking, and never dared to pass by the ghost doctor's clinic again. In the years that followed, the ghost doctor's clinic remained crowded for a while, but after 2 more generations, it eventually closed down because no one in the family knew how to practice medicine anymore, and no one knew the whereabouts of the sacred tablet. This terrifying story happened to a young man named Kang. One day, Kang and his sister-in-law went up to the mountains to gather firewood. While walking, the sister-in-law suddenly needed to find a place to relieve herself. Kang advised her to be careful, as the area was surrounded by a dense forest, and there were many snakes and other dangerous creatures. To be more discreet, the sister-in-law walked deeper into the forest. While Kang waited outside, he suddenly heard his sister-in-law scream loudly. Realizing something was wrong, Kang grabbed a wood-chopping knife and rushed over, thinking she must have encountered a dangerous animal. When Kang arrived, he found his sister-in-law trembling, holding the wood-chopping knife. Her body and face were covered in blood, and she looked horrified when she saw Kang. At her feet were 2 snakes that had been decapitated, but were still coiled around each other. Kang had seen many snakes before, but he had never seen 2 snakes entwined like this. The sister-in-law explained that while she was relieving herself, the 2 snakes crawled toward her. In a panic, she swung the knife and decapitated them.
It didn't seem like a big deal, so the 2 of them packed up the firewood and headed home, not thinking much more about the incident.
The next morning, Kang woke up but noticed his brother and sister-in-law hadn't gotten up as usual. Normally, they would wake early to clean the house and prepare breakfast. They had even planned to go gather firewood again that day, but something felt off. The silence around the house made Kang uneasy. After calling out with no answer, Kang pushed the door open to their room. A strong, foul smell of blood hit Kang's nose, leaving him frozen in shock. The sight before him was horrifying. His brother and sister-in-law had both been murdered in bed, and both had been decapitated.
Kang rushed to inform the authorities, but he was soon suspected of having an affair with his sister-in-law, which led to a violent quarrel and a potential motive for him to kill both his brother and sister-in-law. Kang pleaded his innocence, remembering the strange incident of the day before. As he felt, the deaths of his brother and sister-in-law were surrounded by many unusual circumstances. He wondered if the deaths had anything to do with his sister-in-law killing the 2 snakes. His uncle then recounted the whole story to the district magistrate. Meanwhile, the magistrate's subordinates examined the scene and found a trail of blood on the ground, stretching out to the outside.
Following the blood trail, the magistrate and his team traced it all the way up to the mountain. Wasn't this the spot where the sister-in-law had decapitated the snakes? Kang looked closely and realized it was indeed the place where his sister-in-law had killed the snakes. After the soldiers examined the area, they reported to the magistrate that the blood trail led to an abandoned tomb, where it suddenly vanished, which was very strange. The abandoned tomb had 2 small holes, roughly the size of a fist, and the blood disappeared into them. The magistrate ordered the tomb to be opened. When they opened the coffin, everyone was shocked by what they saw. The two missing heads were inside the coffin, but they were attached to the bodies of two headless snakes. The sight was truly bizarre. Thanks to this discovery, the uncle was cleared of suspicion, but the case still remained unsolved. How the heads had passed through the small holes and ended up in the coffin was a mystery that had no answer. This terrifying story is about two friends who went to the city to find work. One night, they stopped and rested at an abandoned temple. During the dry season, which often lasts for months, most of the young men in the village go everywhere looking for work. They ask for lodging wherever they go, with abandoned houses or temples being the best options. In the middle of the night, while drowsily sleeping, the young man named G-Dragon suddenly woke up and went outside to relieve himself. He found a tree to do his business, casually muttering to himself, but then he suddenly heard footsteps in the forest. Turning around, he saw a gaunt figure who clearly wasn't alive. It looked like a zombie. G, though a brave man, felt a shiver of fear. This was the first time he had encountered something so strange. He followed the figure and saw it enter a cave. After waiting for a long time, it didn't come back out. Immediately, G rushed back to the abandoned temple and told his friend, Top, about what he had seen. Top told G about something he had heard, that if one could hide the coffin lid of a zombie, it wouldn't be able to return to its resting place. People who captured zombies were rewarded with money. Seeing this as a great opportunity to make some money, the two decided to stay another night, waiting for the zombie to return. The zombie left the cave and headed to a yard on the edge of the city. It was an abandoned place, rarely visited by anyone. Once it entered the backyard, it suddenly stopped and looked up, making eerie sounds. Suddenly, a window opened upstairs, and a woman in a red dress lowered a long rope. How strange! How could there be a person in such an abandoned place? The zombie climbed up the rope and embraced the woman. Looking closer, G and Top realized that the woman was also a zombie. At this moment, G and Top sneaked into the cave. They carefully searched to ensure no other zombies were inside. Inside, they found a large coffin, which was clearly where the zombie had been hiding. It was said that if the coffin lid was hidden, the zombie wouldn't be able to find a place to rest. So, the two of them worked together to hide the coffin lid. As they stood aside to watch, at midnight, the zombie returned to the cave. But immediately, it screamed and ran out of the cave, looking terrified. At this point, both young men knew that their plan had worked. They followed the zombie and saw it go back to the yard, calling out loudly for the woman in red. Upstairs, the woman in the red dress lowered the rope again and began pulling the zombie up. This time, the zombie seemed more flustered, but it followed the rope and climbed up. However, halfway up, the sun began to rise. Zombies are known to be extremely sensitive to sunlight, and the daylight caused the zombie intense pain, as if it were being burned alive. The heat from the sun was too much for the zombie, and it couldn't hold on any longer. It fell to the ground. The two young men waited a while, and seeing that the zombie had stopped moving, they rushed over to check. The zombie was now as dried up as a mummy, completely motionless and harmless. The more important thing was that the two of them, with courage, decided to go upstairs to see who the woman in red really was. Upstairs, there was only a single coffin. It turned out that she too was a female zombie. The two had been meeting secretly each night. A perfect strike. Ji and Top quickly handed both zombie bodies over to the authorities to collect their reward. The two zombies were then cremated, and Ji and Top, seeing how much money could be made from capturing zombies, decided to make it their new profession. This terrifying story takes place in a small county where a man named Jung ran a shop making paper offerings, a skill passed down from generation to generation. Jung's paper products were so lifelike that his business thrived and prospered. One night, while Jung was working, he heard a knock at the door. He was surprised, wondering who could be coming at this late hour. When he opened the door, he saw a woman, and after speaking with her, he learned that it wasn't a case of someone passing away and needing paper offerings urgently. Instead, she had something important to discuss with him. The woman explained that her daughter was about to get married, but they didn't have enough money to buy jewelry. She wanted to ask Jung to make some paper jewelry for her daughter. However, Jung was puzzled. How could paper offerings be used for a living person? This dilemma made him hesitant, as paper offerings were typically for the dead. The woman explained that the jewelry was only for display and promised to pay him handsomely. Jung reluctantly agreed, and they arranged that the woman would return the next night to pick up the jewelry. Jung stopped his current work and began making the jewelry. Although it was made of paper, it looked no different from real jewelry. The next evening, the woman arrived with silver and a small amount of food to pick up the jewelry. Jung found it odd. She wasn't poor, so why would she want paper jewelry? That night, the residents near the edge of the town heard lively music playing. They were surprised to hear that a wedding was being held at such a late hour. The sound grew louder and louder, making the nearby villagers curious. A wife told her husband to go outside to check what was going on. When the husband looked outside, he was shocked. His suspicions turned out to be true. People were holding a wedding procession. On the mountain road, the sound of drums and pipes echoed through the mist. The scene seemed almost ghostly. Even more terrifying, the people playing the instruments looked odd, more like strange creatures than humans. The wedding procession continued deeper into the mountains until it disappeared completely. Realizing it was a ghostly wedding procession, everyone ran into their houses and locked the doors. Meanwhile, Jung, after eating a few pastries given to him by the woman, placed the silver beside his pillow and went to sleep. The next morning, he woke up and discovered that the pastries had turned into lumps of dirt. The silver bars had turned into stones. At this moment, Jung realized that the woman was a manifestation of a ghost. He heard rumors about a ghostly wedding procession taking place at night. Curious, he went to the location, only to find it was a cemetery. Perhaps this was the ghost marrying off her daughter story that his father had once told him. This terrifying story is about a man named Sung, who was very timid as a child and never dared to go out alone at night, because at night he often saw terrifying things that ordinary people couldn't see. The things he saw were what people called ghosts in local folklore.
The things he saw were what people called ghosts in local folklore. He could see them everywhere, so when he was young, his mother always took him out, ensuring he was never alone at night.
As a result, he tried to avoid going out at night whenever possible. Even when his friends invited him to go out to see the lanterns, he refused out of fear. But one night, when his father fell ill, his mother asked him to go out and bring a doctor. Sung had to gather all his courage several times before stepping out of the house. For him, simply going out at night was enough to make his fears resurface. The trip to the doctor's house went smoothly, and Sung successfully brought the doctor back to his home. While walking through a narrow alley, he happened to glance over and saw a horrifying sight. He saw a white-robed ghost with a long tongue, harming a drunken man. The drunken man's body was being strangled by the ghost's long, twisted tongue. The ghost with the white robe and long tongue noticed Sung, glaring at him with a menacing look. Sung, now pale with fear, caused the doctor to notice. Upon questioning, the doctor realized that Sung had the ability to see ghosts. The doctor then said that he knew a few ways to expel evil spirits, and after treating Sung's father, he would help him with his problem. The doctor, who was highly skilled, used only a few acupuncture needles to help Sung's father feel much better. As the doctor was giving instructions on how to take medicine, a horrifying scream from Sung came from outside the window. When his parents rushed outside, they found him lying unconscious on the ground, worried about what had happened to their son. It was terrifying. Sung's face was as pale as death, and there was a mark on his neck as though something had strangled him. Quickly, they placed Sung on the bed, and the doctor took out a brush dipped in cinnabar ink. The doctor then wrote the character Dao, meaning sword, on Sung's neck, explaining that this ink was highly effective in exorcising evil spirits. Next, he wrote the character Huo, meaning fire, on each of Sung's palms, explaining that he was using a spiritual flame to burn away the evil entity that had taken residence inside him. Immediately, Sung screamed in agony, pleading for them not to burn him, but the voice that came out wasn't his own. Then, a stream of black energy surged out of Sung's body. It turned out that when he went outside earlier, his body had been possessed by the spirit. The black energy broke through the door and fled outside, followed by an eerie, resounding sound. The exorcism had worked. Sung woke up, and the doctor prescribed him some calming medicine. The doctor wrote the character B, meaning close, on Sung's forehead. From then on, Sung was no longer able to see the terrifying things he had seen before.